So, leaving the Amber Temple, both the groups have the black carriages just outside waiting for them with an invitation from Strahd saying that they will have safe passage to the castle and that he invites them for dinner. Prime does smoosh their way crowdedly into this black carriage and they ride on down the mountainside. Alpha, suspicious of this offer, not only ditches the wagon, but also uses stone shape to construct a boot for it, so that the horses painfully and slowly drag their way after the party. It is clear that unless the party takes a very long time, this carriage will not catch up. And Alpha also makes their way down the mountain, but on foot, so still having to deal with the effects of extreme cold, which they really do. It really doesn't slow them down. They do a bang-up job getting through, although they do take enough levels of exhaustion that they're planning to rest at Salenka Pass when they get there and are able to take shelter once again. As we're cruising down, we have kind of slightly different parties in our two different groups. With Prime, we have Sir Godfrey with us. We have Casimir Velikov, the Dusk Elf, who has accepted the dark gift of Zudun, the Corpse Star, which will hopefully allow him to raise his ancient dead sister. And we have Ismark, the Lesser, still in search of his captured sister. In Alpha, we have still Esmeralda and Van Richten, but instead of the others, we still have our gladiator from among the Wilder folk. She's still with us at this point. We have Irina herself, and we have Victor, who is still acting really weirdly nice to people, although it kind of seems like that's starting to wear a little thin. As everybody is headed down, in Prime, something quite singular happens. As they are going downhill in the wagon, they cross over the bridge at Salenka Pass, and a foe that they had defeated earlier but not killed resurfaces and gives chase. They are set upon once again by the Rock of Mount Gakus, who comes after them, but just as quickly as it appears, so too does another figure. Booming out of magical smoke, a man appears on their wagon. Next to them, a rough and wild man, and he shouts to them an incomprehensible poem, a riddle. As he blasts the rock away from them with his incredible magic, holding it at bay, he seems to offer them cryptic advice, referencing the castle and all sorts of other things. It is made clear to Prime that they have that they are going to have to write down what this man is saying and remember it, because I'm not going to slow down any longer than to describe the magnificent spells that he is hurling at this great beast. So they do what they can to record his musings before the carriage does make it across the pass. He flies off to redirect the rock away from them. Their battle continues through the skies over the forest, and then he is gone just as quickly as he appeared. Prime, would you like to see this poem of his written down for the first time?
Oh my god, that would be nice.
All right.
Well, actually, first, wait, before you do that, I already pulled up what I had written down, so I can read that, and you can get an idea of, or I don't know, should we let people see it first?
No, yeah, okay. Sure.
Yeah, either way.
I mean, you can gasp out whatever shreds of it you have.
So first off, my notes are, the first thing I could pull up was an email, and the title of this email is Crazy Druid instead of Crazy Druid Dude. And I've got like 7 lines of, I hope I got this right.
Mm-hmm. I've listed my OneNote, and the page for this guy is titled in all undercase Guy. Everything else is like Strahd's Castle, vampire stuff, interrogating Rakadin, and this is just Guy.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's not a whole lot memorable about him. No immediately identifying features.
So what did we have recorded from that?
So
Yeah.
what I had was, when Lantern Bearer leaves us cold, go to Chapel Old. Way down is up. Green, blue, violet, Arbane. Dungeon dark, climb must start. Finish at Castle's heart. Pass through fire is quest. That's it. That's all I had.
Pass through fire is quest.
That's a poem.
Threshold, no way back.
Yeah.
When Lantern Bearer leaves you cold, hasten to Chapel Old. Crypt is shut, only way down is up. Crypt of mist, room of flame. Green, blue, violet are thy bane. From dungeon dark, your climb must start. Pass through fire. That's all I got.
Oh, he tells you to go to the thing and then which ones not to go to.
Yep, that's very
Wow.
helpful.
Wow, that's great.
Must be nice.
All right. Are we ready for that full poem?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here it is. How many times do I have to click? Wait, I fucked it up. Hold on. What do I have to do here? Yeah, there it is.
Where is it?
It's gone now. You missed it.
What?
It scrolled Star Wars like across the screen. It was an incredible joke.
I did not see that.
Yeah, exactly. It took.
I was gonna say that's
sad.
about how it was
No, I mean-
to us when he read it.
Oh. I mean, I was looking at the presentation the whole time.
Oh, well, I saw it.
Mine is getting weird.
Yeah.
The stream review is currently reduced to audio and video quality.
All right. Pretend it was really, really funny. Here it is, actually. So you guys had most of it.
What? I still don't see it.
Oh, well, that's fucked up. Can other people see it?
Yeah, that's the problem. Is the stream's dead.
Oh, no.
Wrong with the stream.
I don't see it either.
It tells me it is broadcasting. I am looking at it in Discord, and it is showing that page.
I see a little error message. Yeah.
I don't think there's anything I can do about that. I am running it at the quality I want to be running it at. I could do a Windows update. God damn it. What slide can you see?
It's the rock and the guy.
Oh, now it shows me that you guys can see that. That's fucked up. Okay. I'm going to stop and start again. A permanent solution that will make everybody happy. How about that?
Hey, there we go.
There you go. There's Kayla. Hello.
Oh.
Yes, Kayla, you are muted. She says her dad is loud. Okay.
So the idea here was that at this point, Prime was actually pretty far behind Alpha. Alpha had actually been in the castle for a good minute by the time we were getting to this point with Prime, and long enough also that I kind of created an idea of like, all right, what are the highlights of Castle Ravenloft? What are the places that Prime actually needs to hit on their way through things? And this was an attempt to grant them some structure, but at the end of the day, I wasn't going to be too bothered if they wandered off of it. There was nothing that was like going to fuck them up if they did stray from this path. And, you know, they would find all kinds of goofy, wonderful things that exist in Castle Ravenloft if they happened to. But if they stuck to this, it would keep them on the quickest critical path through everything they needed to do before the final encounter. So I was happy to introduce a little panic to accomplish that. So Prime experiences this, and they go rattling on. Alpha also has unfinished business here because they also did not kill the rock on their first way through here. And it returns to wreak vengeance upon them. Another battle is fought, and both Action and Esmeralda are sent plummeting into the valley below the bridge. But the rock this time is killed. It also falls into the valley with them. So there's that at least. The rest of the party is up on the bridge. They're going to take shelter in the gatehouse there. It is night in the Svallish Woods, but Action and Esmeralda feel they have no choice but to start the long trek to find their way around to meet up on the winding road farther downhill. They're 500 feet down steep cliffs from the rest of their party, and they can't think of a way to overcome that. So they are going to trek around on foot to hope they can meet up with them later. So we have a buddy-buddy night in the woods with these two, and as they try to rest, they are interrupted by horrible, horrible ghosts that set upon them. This is a random encounter I've been waiting to have for forever, for the entire party. And it was just these two against 3 ghosts. So things seem to be going pretty okay until the first round, when the ghosts used an ability that permanently aged both of them by a great number of years. And they said, let's fuck this, actually. And Action used this super handy spell that he has, Dimension Door, to teleport them more than 500 feet away. At which point he went, That would have been useful earlier, perhaps. But it's the middle of the night in the woods. What are you going to do? We're going to keep walking is what we're going to do. And as we go, we see that we are being followed by the silhouette of a strange stag silhouetted against the moon. A strange intelligence in this creature as it follows us. And eventually, it makes... Okay, I'm clicking this, and something should be happening when I click it. Why is it not? Yeah, there we go. And eventually it reveals itself and it transforms into this man, this crazy man. And he's like, you work for Strahd. And he attacks them. And they must do battle. And an epic battle it is. Spells, blastings. At some point, they are pretty sure that he casts Time Stop, a 9th level spell. But he seems a little bit of a glass cannon. They burst him down a little bit. And he eventually relents and says something to the effect of, I can see that you are not servants of Strahd. And he gives Action a charm bracelet that he can use to cast heroism. And he fucks off back into the woods and is gone as mysteriously as he appeared.
Wow.
Oh, a very rude man.
Yeah.
I want a bracelet that casts heroism.
Get Eldritch Blasted.
You guys got a poem instead of that.
That was a helpful poem.
But
Very...
we got this bracelet, and it let us cast the spell Heroism, which requires concentration.
Yeah.
It was not great.
Unfortunately,
But not much better.
yes, we had to scrape what we could get from this man. We were not able to get anything else from him. And in fact, it would have been quite difficult to do so. Even if you had drawn him as your fated ally, all that really would have done would have been to point you in a direction to make you think perhaps this is someone we should really, really try to form a relationship with. You see, this is the mage who came to Barovia 1 year ago and led a failed rebellion against Strahd. It is that guy. Strahd struck him down high over Sayre Falls. He plummeted into the water, but he did not die. He lost most of his gear, swept away into oblivion by the river, and has wandered in the forest for a year. Haunted by his failure, he has strayed into madness. He has lost his mind and his memories, and now wanders Barovia, usually polymorphed into an animal of some sort, such as a stag. If you wanted him to be of use to you, first you would need to track him through the woods, just spending enough time in the woods actively looking for, like, a stag or just a guy or something, to find where he was. you would need to cast Greater Restoration on him in order to restore his memories. And he will resist this, and not only will he resist this, every day he casts this 9th level spell Mind Blank on himself, which makes him immune to Greater Restoration. You would have to attempt to cast Greater Restoration on him, at which point you would realize he's immune to it, which would, after you made an Arcana check, allow you to identify Mind Blank, which would then allow you to dispel Mind Blank, or attempt to. It's a 9th level spell, after which you could then cast Greater Restoration on him, at which point he would say, "Oh, thank you. You have restored my memory and my sanity. Thank you for your efforts. Please, come with me to a safe place. You can come and stay with me briefly in my mansion." And he would take you to a shimmering portal, barely visible in the middle of the woods, and take you inside to a magnificent mansion within. And if you asked him about it, he would say, "Oh, this is just a little spell that I invented." And if you said that you invented, you would say, "Oh, yes, well, haven't I introduced myself?
Oh no.
I am Mordenkainen, the Magnificent, leader of the Circle of Eight, the most powerful wizard in all the world of Greyhawk. I was the very first character played by Gary Gygax, the inventor of Dungeons & Dragons, and have been the iconic wizard mascot of Dungeons & Dragons ever since. I came to this land to destroy the vampire Strahd, but in my hubris I left behind my most powerful weapon of all, my friends and allies. Alone, overconfident, and unprepared, I was humbled by the vampire with his magic and his regeneration, his hellish allies, his profane instruments, but now I will fight at your side." That's too much. So no one got that.
No.
Apologies.
No.
He's an archmage. He has 9th level spells.
Yeah, he'll just.
That's pretty much
do
it,
the
though.
damn thing, huh?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
So, like, I don't know if you ever just, like, imagine, like, you know, just looked at their stat blocks and was like, who would win in a 1v1? I assume it would be Mordenkainen and not Strahd.
Here's the thing. It's a rocket race, and man does Strahd have a lot more hit points than Mordenkainen. And man does Mordenkainen not have, just in his basic kit, a way to deal radiant damage. Like,
Surprising.
you could, say Mordenkainen is the most powerful wizard in the world of Greyhawk and should be assumed to have a way to deal radiant damage. But I think one assumes that he came here expecting, like, oh, this is just a vampire. That's ACR, this creature that should have this going on, and I should be able to just disintegrate him. Well, Strahd has a number of other things going on that perhaps were less predictable and seem to have been enough to turn the tide. But, I mean, the sad truth of it is, too, that this is not a character who has 20 levels of a player character class. They did just give him the standard Archmage stat block, which is deficient to player characters in many ways, but is nonetheless still a very valuable thing. And if you already have a party of adventurers to give him meat shields, then he becomes something else entirely. But I knew that this was not a feasible outcome for either party to enlist him as an ally. It would have taken a lot of really dedicated work with very, very little idea that it would pay off in any way. Alpha did spend a fair amount of time because they heard where he had plummeted down looking for his gear in the hopes that it had washed up on the riverbank or something, but it is specifically said by the adventurer to have washed away and not be recoverable. So, apologies.
Yeah,
We spent more time talking about how we wanted to check it out than we did actually looking for it.
That is true.
yeah, it's very true.
Mm-hmm.
Ain't that just the way?
Yeah.
Just the way. Both parties will eventually make their way to this crossroads. One thing that I should, for Alpha, mention is that eventually the rest of the party does catch up with Action and Esmeralda. They cast Greater Restoration on them to undo their aging. It turned out they had 24 hours in which to do that, after which time it would not be possible to do it by any means. So they do manage to hit that benchmark. And then they do a proper long rest with everybody. And in that time, really struggle bussing, really sweating and tongues lolling out. The black horses drawing Strahd's booted carriage do eventually catch up to them. It seems that they've been going all day and all night following them. And now the party goes, okay, well, all right, now let's load everybody in here. And now we're off again. But both parties will make it to the crossroads near Krezk, where someone is waiting for them. This is the abbot and Vasilka, who are not going to allow themselves to fade into the background of this. They have not been dealt with. They have a plan to mollify Strahd, to present to him a bride that will fulfill him and perhaps soften his stony heart. But in Prime, Irina has already been taken by Strahd, and the abbot has become aware of this. And when the party comes and stops before him, he says unto them, do you intend to stop Strahd and Irina from consummating their union? And they say that they either say that they will, or they cannot conceal their intent to save Irina from Strahd. And he really tries a little bit to talk them out of it, but eventually he gives a heavy sigh and he says, I am afraid that this is something that I cannot allow. I must prevent you from interfering because I believe this is the right way forward. And Prime sets to battle with Vasilka and the abbot here.
By the way, I have the stream thing again. I'm still looking at Mordenkainen.
Is that true for others?
Yes.
I'll reload it.
Yeah, oh my god, he's so handsome.
Mm-hmm. This is fan art that actually matches how the abbot is described. The book has art that very much does not match how the abbot is described, which I found quite disappointing. Prime does battle with the two of them here, and Prime is victorious. The abbot is a fallen angel, as we discover, and he wields great radiant damage with his mace, also the ability to heal himself and Vasilka, and she is no slouch herself, but Prime has full spell slots, summons a dragon, and the two of them fall, and they reach for one another in their dying moments, but they fall just too far apart to touch hands for the last time, and both are destroyed. And Prime continues. Alpha is still a little unsure of how to handle this whole abbot situation, and we have a lot of other people with us kind of complicating the picture. Especially complicating the picture is the fact that we have Irina with us. So in Alpha, our first kind of thought is, okay, we really don't want the abbot to know about Irina because, as you know, they don't know this, but with Prime, we have seen the outcome of the abbot knowing about Irina, and Alpha has accurately guessed that this will be the outcome, that he will try to get the two of them together if he knows that that's an option. So Rictavio takes his hat of disguise and swaps it onto Irina, and the two of them kind of slip out the back of the carriage while others are talking with the abbot to distract him. Together with Esmeralda, the three of them kind of slink away, and they pull a switcheroo as the abbot is saying, hey, I want to make good on this plan to wed Vasilka to Strahd. Give us a ride in your wagon and take us to Castle Ravenloft.
Alan, it was a little bit different. We gave the hat of disguise to the abbot, put on Vasilka to look like Irina.
Oh, that is right. Thank you.
And
Yeah.
I gave the ring of mind shielding to Irina.
Yeah. Giving the hat to Irina was something that was discussed, but yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because we gave the hat to, we were like, hey, Abbott, we found this great hat that can, and you know what? We saw a picture of Strahd's old flame, you know,
That's right.
in Perez. So we'll describe what she looks like, and we just describe Irina to him, and then so Vasilka looks like Irina.
Wow.
Yeah, and so an important detail to this that may have been missed is that the abbot cannot put the hat on Vasilka and command it what to look like. The fact that Vasilka takes on Irina's countenance means that she was, in fact, more than intelligent enough to hear your description and render that appearance herself. I think something that flew under the radar. But Irina and Rictavio and Esmeralda sneak out the back. The abbot and Vasilka load into the wagon, and they ride off with the three who snuck out following on foot. So quite a bit slower, but they will eventually catch up. There is a companion in the wagon alongside these two. These two are sitting inside the cabin with Action and with Victor Volakovich. And the abbot looks at Victor and pretty immediately gives him a once-over and seems to come to a conclusion and a decision about him, and tells Action, you cannot trust this person. You are better off ridding yourself of him as soon as possible. He has no soul. There is nothing redemptive within him whatsoever. And Action kind of starts to formulate a reply to this, I think, but Victor pretty much, not immediately, because it takes a little bit for the abbot to like fully wax up to this revelation, and it's in a way that is purposefully like provoking Victor. He's kind of building up to it. Victor leaps to action to like take wrathful action against the abbot, and Vasilka simply grabs him by the neck and throws him out of the wagon while it is moving at speed. He breaks his leg upon the road and rolls off into the mist behind them as the wagon continues to go. Everybody else riding on top of the wagon sees that happen and is kind of like, huh, how about that? And the abbot makes it clear that he's not here to fuck around. But that's not the last that we'll see of Victor, as he limps slowly after the carriage. We will not come upon him right away, though, even with the group that is bringing up the rear, because something else will happen with them before we get to this point. Those who are following behind are Irina and Van Richten and Esmeralda. And I can see that I've screwed up an animation here. That's fine. Was that?
Good slide.
Yeah.
I like your slides.
Oh, thank you. As they are traveling, suddenly they realize that they are being watched from all sides, and a number of figures emerge from the woods in an ambush position. It is a great number of Vistani, and this is of concern because, as we all know, the Vistani work for Strahd. Leading them are Luvash. This is our first and only time meeting Luvash, I think, and only Rictavio is here to do it, and his brother Aragol, and they are clearly here for Esmeralda. She is their primary target with this. It seems like they have unfinished business with her. They see her as a traitor to their people, and they want to take her into custody, but it also seems like they will not be beyond killing Van Richten if he gets in their way, and they seem intent on capturing Irina as well, as it seems like we are about to close to battle, and there's a good number of these Vistani bandits being led by these two. It's there's more than a dozen of them. Suddenly, a great furball comes racing in, still wearing its armor. This is Hot Dog, the saber-toothed tiger trained to fight the Vistani by Rictavio. He skids in among them, and Rictavio senses that he has a choice, that the group will look to him on what to do. Esmeralda commands him and the others. She says, get on Hot Dog's back, take Irina, and ride after the others. I will hold them off. I'm the one they want, and I can slow them down enough for you to escape. But he considers the odds of fighting this fight as a group altogether as well. Rictavio makes the decision to grab Irina, put them both on Hot Dog's back, and they ride off after the rest of the group, leaving Esmeralda behind to contend with the other Vistani. What's up?
Notably, Esmeralda gave Rictavio the Sun Sword as they left.
Yeah.
Because she was the one that had been using it up until then.
I honestly forgot that she had been because she, barely...
It was very brief, and I'm not sure she actually had it. She might have used it against the fucking Mordenkainen.
Yeah.
The other reason I went and left is I figured secretly he would probably survive if I were not there.
Oh, interesting.
Oh yeah, you would fuck her up with the disadvantage or whatever.
Yeah.
Worried about the influence of his curse, he leaves her behind. Prime...
Yeah, in hindsight, that makes that a better call. I remember kind of questioning it at the time. but that's correct.
Prime is... they have a pretty quick and easy time for the most part crossing Barovia. They do kind of smash their way through Vallaki. Both groups experience this, where the cart does not stop for the doors of Vallaki. Oop, there they are, sliding away. They simply go smashing into the town. For Prime, somebody runs up to try to speak with them for a moment. This is the burgomistress, of course, Lady Voctor. I was a little disappointed that we ended up in a situation where there were a whole bunch of party members on top of the wagon, because if everybody had managed to fit inside and all she saw was Strahd's black wagon pulled by Strahd's black horses, she probably would have shouted something presumptuous that might have given away some sort of game. But as it was, she sees them and they're kind of like, hello, sorry, we gotta go. And there's not really any need for interaction. But this is certainly, she's been planning this whole time to she is responsible for getting Irina captured by Strahd and betraying the party to make that happen. And she's been kind of scheming, how do I get the party to either work for me, because they've been very vocal about how they want to deal with Strahd. I've got to get them working for me somehow, or eliminate them somehow, and then for them to rocket through town in Strahd's black carriage. She's like, well, now I don't know what's going on. We leave her behind in our dust for the moment, and both parties are arriving at Castle Ravenloft. This is where we're beginning the end game. It looks a little different for the two groups, because with Alpha, we have, as we rattle up to the drawbridge and the gates, we still have the Abbot and Vasilka with us, and they are intent on going inside and preparing for a wedding. This is what they do, in fact. They immediately disembark upon arriving here. The Abbot says, come and find us in the chapel when you are ready, and he simply takes Vasilka inside to go make preparations, leaving it up to the party whether they want to follow or not. They linger for long enough that eventually Van Richten... there they go, into the castle. Eventually Van Richten and Irina with Hot Dog appear here. Whereupon we have to make a choice, okay, we've been bringing Irina with us because we think that she's pretty safe with us, but now we are entering Castle Ravenloft. So maybe that would change at this point. So with Van Richten's Ring of Mind Shielding, and with Hot Dog as a companion, they send her to Barovia Village, which is pretty nearby. She knows the land pretty well. Hopefully she'll be able to hide and wait things out there long enough for the party to wrap things up.
Was that when Old Man Mardukov came?
Yeah.
Yes, so he is also...
He's naked too.
Yeah. Well, whenever he's transforming, he's naked. Because your clothes don't transform with you, and it'd be very suspicious to be a raven flying around with big old baggy man clothes on. So he is also going to be trying to shepherd her safely to Barovia Village. He's going to be an instrument to that effort. So we have our kind of base party at the endgame here. The only unoriginal member is Van Richten, but we have all the rest of us ready to come into this. So for Peregrine, this will be her second time at the castle, and she is perhaps remembering her initial lonely excursion here and the things that Strahd has done to toy with her. For action, this is the culmination of his quest to rid this land of this horrible, great undead and be the ultimate undead cop by smacking this guy out. Nyx is super, super excited to be level 9 at this point, but super, super worried that she's not level 10. And when is that going to happen? Is it going to happen in time? And then, of course, we have Lucian, who I failed to mention earlier. When we rested on the bridge in Salenka Pass, I believe Julia was not there for that session, so everybody drew a face on Lucian while he was asleep, and we will use this token for almost the entire rest of the game.
Yeah, that's my face now.
Yeah. Prime, they've commissioned this art by this point of their party arriving at Ravenloft, and this is pretty much how it happens. Look at all these juicy people we have with us. Look at all these hangers on. Sir Godfrey, played by Carter, here to kick ass. We still have Casimir Velikov, who again looks like a corroded, nasty undead because of the dark gift he's accepted. Ismark is here to be like, we gotta find my sister. And Esmeralda and Van Richten in this group just have this kind of weird tension the whole time. And they're both clearly badasses, but they've both clearly got enough personal baggage that they're not really totally reliable people. And that's how we commit into things. So for Prime, we are coming into this with the structure laid out by the poem. And for the most part, Prime follows this pretty closely, actually. So I made this handy little flow chart of what we had here. Because, again, we'd gone through enough of this stuff in Alpha that I was starting to get a taste of like, okay, what are kind of some good beats to put in? What's some stuff that, if they got to it, that would be great, but it's maybe kind of extra content, or we could treat it that way. So this was the flow that I designed for this, because the card that Prime drew was that they would have their final encounter in the vault, so I knew we had to end up there. And I knew that, it would just be expected to kind of come in the front door. So I wanted to hit some of the big important rooms. We ended up swooping through just like this. So for purposes of this recap, we will be talking quite a bit about things that Alpha did that Prime did not do. There are entire levels of the castle that Prime never went to, that Alpha explored all of. I'm going to really try to keep that as tight as possible, because a lot of it is just kind of dungeon stuff, and y'all can relate that at your convenience whenever you want. There's really not too much plot stuff that is lost by this. There's, definitely jump in and talk about whatever character moments and experiences you want to, but when it comes to what's in what room, I'm going to try to gas through it with a fair amount of efficiency. So, but this was, I think that the Alpha did pretty much everything that's in this outline too, so this should be the core of the shared experience between you two. Something I could talk about for Alpha that happened with them pretty much immediately, and for Prime, not at all, is that when Alpha walks into the foyer of the castle, there are all these Barovian guards that are dead in here. And they surmise that these were the guards that came with Ismark, whom we learned went into the castle with his guards in search of Irina, and we're not seen again. Nyx does the only humane thing and casts Danse Macabre, a 5th level necromancy spell, to raise them all as super beefed up zombies. And not a moment too soon, because that's when all the gargoyles and all the stone dragons in the room come to life and descend upon them. This is me combining the very first 2 encounters in the castle, and it is a fuckfest of damage. There are 4 red dragon wormlings who each have a really bad breath weapon that can hit multiple people and do a lot of damage. These gargoyles have a fuck ton of hit points and 3 attacks, and they just start going to town on everybody, and it's real fucked up. I decided to skip this entirely for Prime because I actually like them quite a bit and want them to be my friends. So it's...
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, it's pretty fortunate that before things can go too bad, somebody has the presence of mind to shout out hello, we're here. I believe it's Van Richten, who kind of calls out, and they can hear in response a clattering from the stairs up above, and rushing to see what's going on is this fellow. This is Cyrus Bellevue, and he's the castle caretaker, and he's like, what are you doing, guardians? Go back to sleep, you silly guys. And the ones who were not destroyed, which was most of them, fly back up to their perches and take it up again. And he's like, I am so sorry about this. But of course he says it much more monstrously in a way that I will not ask my voice to do tonight. And he's like, I really don't know what happened. The master... gave the command. Well, I do kind of know what happened, but I don't really understand it. The master told me to fetch the chamberlain and tell him to command the castle defenses to stand down, but I cannot find the chamberlain anywhere. I have no idea where he is. So I'm sorry. That's why you received such a rude welcoming after being promised safe passage. I wonder what happened to Rahadin. And he's, well, don't worry about that. Come on in. I'll, make you comfortable here and get you situated.
He did not elucidate.
No. In fact, we have, with different contexts, we have the same conversation with Prime, because Prime also meets Cyrus pretty quickly upon entering the castle, and he invites them to go over into the dining room and there to await Strahd's pleasure. And then he departs to ready things. So they loiter outside the dining room, but they're like, we really don't think that our poem mentioned a dining room. It mentioned a chapel. And with our maps that we think we have a good idea of where the chapel is. So we're going to agonize over this for a second, but we're simply not going to go into the dining room ever. And we're going to go straight to the chapel instead. So they head off in that direction while Alpha goes and short rests in the dining room because they got their shit really fucked up. Oh my god. In Castle Ravenloft, things are just kind of all over the place in terms of challenge rating. And in some rooms, they kind of advise you on actually a lot of things will specifically not attack you while you are entering the castle. But if you try to leave, they will activate. And I believe the gargoyles were technically among that number, but you guys are here at level 9. Let's have some fun. Alpha makes it to the dining room where Strahd is playing upon the organ. But when the party enters and he stops playing and turns to speak to them, they see that it is not Strahd as they know him, but a much younger and somewhat fairer countenance Strahd who welcomes them as visitors to the castle, and they get the sense that this is a programmed illusion which soon disappears from an age-long past of a different man, a still mortal man in his official capacity, welcoming visitors to this place. We hide out here, we take our short rest, and even though the Dance Macabre spell was only supposed to last an hour, the zombies that Nyx has just raised of the Barovian guards persist and seem intent to do so indefinitely. A super spooky side effect of necromantic magic in Barovia, and not just me being a simp for my girlfriend and wanting her spells to last a long time and be cool and effective. Prime has gone to the chapel, and for the sake of talking about rooms kind of at the same time, I'm going to talk a little bit about the first time that Alpha goes there. Alpha, I found it impossible to retrace Alpha's route through this castle because they would go to a room, then they go to another floor, then they come back to that room, then they go somewhere else, and then they go all over the place and come back. So we were in and out of the chapel a lot, and I could not keep up with it. But certainly in our early first visit to the chapel, the situation is that the abbot is here with Vasilka, and he is trying to sweep it up. He is trying to get it clean. He's trying to get the broken and cobwebbed pews in order for the wedding, which he hopes to officiate here shortly. He notes that, as the party may as well, that there is a corpse in the chapel of a man. This is just bones at this point in a robe, leaning against the dais, holding a black mace in one hand, and seems to have been holding, shortly before or at the moment of his death, this strange icon which now rests upon the dais, an icon of silver which the abbot has not yet inspected himself. We are...
And we were like, weird, anyway.
We're going to move on from that for now.
We also had a history of just kind of just like letting the abbot do his thing. He was like, we're gonna do a wedding, and we're like, sure. Anyways, all right.
Let's see how this plays out.
Yeah.
I really, really valued the alpha, let's see how this plays out mentality. We got to see a lot of stuff play out.
Yeah, that's true.
Prime...
The screen is down for me right now.
Okay.
Is that true of anyone else? Is that just me?
I'll bounce it. Pretty easy to do.
I think it was stuck on the organ.
Prime does collect the Mace of Terror here in their first foray through. I think Alpha will pick this up at some point, but I don't remember if they ended up using it.
It was
or not.
pretty late. I'm not even sure if we got it prior to the big fight.
Yeah, I think you got it a little later on, and it was too late for it to be really impressive to you. But Prime goes, ooh, a Mace of Terror, and we keep going. At this point with Prime, though, as we're here in the chapel, some of their many NPCs turn to them and make a proposition. Van Richten says, it seems like you're going to be following this poem, which seems well and good and definitely a helpful and fun idea. It seems to me like there may be a lot of castle outside of that. There may be a lot of other threats that need to be neutralized. What if Esmeralda and myself went and explored the non-critical areas to try to wipe out whatever random encounters are there? We can take Ismark with us. He's a beefy boy. We can carry him. And we will try to root out other things so you don't have to deal with that. The party agrees this is not a terrible idea. And we split into two parties here. This threesome will make their way to the higher levels of like the main towers of Ravenloft, and I'm going to use them generally as an excuse for why we never have to fight a bunch of wights, or just like 4 vampire spawn over and over and over again. So many encounters of 4 vampire spawn that you could potentially run into in this castle, and just other things associated, such as like, you know, a treacherous maid or something like that. We just won't have to worry about that with Prime, and we'll have assumed that these badasses will have handled it in the interim. So they go off. Prime, following their poem, believe that they have to climb the high tower, which they can do from here. So they will begin to go in that direction. Alpha, in the meantime, has found a secret door behind the organ in the dining room, and they use it to gain access to hidden passageways that come with stairwells, which they use to descend into the bowels of the castle. There are 2 areas that Prime didn't go to at all, which I'm going to try to kind of sweep through here. It's basically a story of all the fucking weird people that we find while we're exploring here. As we go into the dungeons, which are a flooded level of the castle, there are cells down here that are waist deep in water. There's a hallway full of traps. Oh, here's the slide I was supposed to be showing earlier of Ismark and all that. The dungeons.
The stream is down for me, I guess.
Yeah.
Pretty instantly that this happens. Seems
Just between every
pretty
slide,
sad.
just refresh the stream.
The dungeons are flooded up to waist deep and quite cold and quite nasty. Terrible things lurk beneath the water. Oozes that corrode your armor. Zombies and severed hands that grasp at you. There are slightly sexier things as well, such as this guy. Hello. Let's absolutely make sure to put this man in a situation where we can draw him just as wet as possible. This is Emil Torescu, and they immediately suss out who he is, given the description that they received from his wife. This was the leader of the werewolf pack who mysteriously disappeared to make way for Kirill Stoyanovich to become leader of the pack and swear the pack's fealty to Strahd. This is the husband of Zuleika, and they're immediately like, oh, we know who you are, we trust you, and we think you're a good guy, and we know you're a werewolf. And he goes, okay. That is pretty much the entirety of my content would have been navigating those questions. But we've just sort of skipped through that. it's also too late for me to take command of the werewolves again in any meaningful way that could be helpful to you. So I guess you're just going to be trying to shepherd me, who am I'm immune to non-magical damage. You're going to be trying to get me safely out of this dungeon, and that's going to be the entirety of your interaction with me. In another cell, deep in the bowels of the castle, they find someone else. Is that actually my next slide, or am I jumping the gun? That is my next slide. Long forgotten, for days having suffered here alone, all of a sudden, face to face, they are reunited with best friend, buddy cop, Daniel. And I'm doing, I was going to say my best George impression, my laziest George impression this entire time, which is basically just to say, what? Like pretty much whenever anybody told him anything. Because granted, pretty much everything they told him warranted that reaction. And they're over the moon to see him again, and he is super glad to be rejoining the adventure as a party member with equal standing. He's still level 4 and doesn't have any gear. And he is just super jazzed to throw himself into danger along with the rest of them. But he can deal radiant damage, just like automatically, because his class is bullshit. But also...
Shoot radiant fist fuse, not fair.
Yeah. Also in this dungeon, Nyx finds a magical sword, which is intelligent and can be used to cast. She can use it to cast heroism on herself, and everyone tries to like bully her into giving it up, and she doesn't. And I respect her very much. It is really not that.
It cast Crusader's Mantle, didn't it?
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
I think it
way more
may.
useful spell.
Yeah. So it's really good. That's most of its benefit, to be honest. Like if you somehow didn't have a magic sword by this point, then you would want this. But if you have a sun sword, you're gonna want to use that instead. So that was great fun. And we also have an encounter with, this is a word we had to Google because all of us knew what this thing was, but none of us knew the word for it, or I didn't anyway. A cloche, a magical silver. So this is a dish with a dome over it, like from a fancy animated Disney movie of yesteryear, that just sort of bobs down a staircase to the party as if held by an invisible servant. And upon opening it, they find that the dish is full of old moldy biscuits. And they disrespectfully dump the biscuits, and they take the cloche and they put it in their gear because they think it looks valuable, which means that as I realize that every time I roll this random encounter and the cloche appears to them bearing something different, they're going to get more cloches and just keep collecting value, which is a little disappointing.
Closure and closure.
But more disappointing is the fact that they don't eat one of these moldy biscuits, because what this random encounter is the first person who eats a moldy biscuit finds that it's the best thing they've ever had in their life, and they gain inspiration. And anyone else who eats one just finds them to be horrible and nauseating thereafter.
Earlier, we had learned that the people of Barovia Village were addicted to eating children pies, so we don't eat the food here.
Yes,
We can
at this
avoid
point,
it.
we were like, everything's the worst.
Yeah. Very different biscuits, these. These were made of adults. That's not true. Can you guys still see the slide?
Yes.
Daniel.
It's very surprising. From here, they go up into the larders. This is a level of the castle dedicated to the preparation of meals and like servants' quarters and stuff. Arahadine's office is here. The wine cellar is here. There's another dungeon, of course, because you can never have enough dungeons. The old guard quarters are here. Some things that we encounter sweeping through this level. First and foremost, most important, gotta shout him out. Our best friend Bogan. We have a random encounter where there is a big spider cocoon, and the individual they cut out of it is a Valaki guardsman who is absolutely out of his mind with terror. They kind of smack some calm back into him. He reveals his name is Bogan, and he can recount for them what happened with Ismark's ill-fated incursion into the castle, how all...
To give him any credit at all, we got him out of the cocoon, and he looked over, and all of his dead friends had been reanimated and were standing behind us. So I think he had a reason to be freaked out.
Yes. He's not having a good time, our Bogan. He very much wants to get out of here. He is able to inform the party that Ismark has been captured by Strahd, and he does not know what has happened to him. He is also able to reveal that there are spiders somewhere, but he doesn't know where. And we have another person tagging along. Say it.
When Alan was being Bogan, he actually screamed for like a minute. He wouldn't stop.
It was one of those things that I would have preferred to be in person, because then I could physically close Alan's mouth instead of it didn't work as well.
Instead we were powerless.
Remote, and we just had to be like, shut up.
Had to role play an effective method. It created some urgency. And I think that we found the correct way to calm him more quickly out of that. I think I'm perfect, and no decision I make should ever be questioned.
You definitely protected yourself.
Mm-hmm. So we have another guy schlooping along with us now. Also, while we're going through here, we meet up with Cyrus Bellevue again, and he's like, "You silly guys! I told you to wait in the dining room. You're so bad at just like waiting. Well, whatever. I'll take you to your bedrooms now. Yes, follow me." And this is a situation where, like, again, we're like winding in and out of levels. So we're actually, when Cyrus is conducting us around through here, he happens to lead us to a certain place where he knows there is a trap that he intends to get the party to trigger. It is a weight-activated trap, and he knows that he is not heavy enough by himself to activate it. So what he hopes to do is lead the party down this hallway. He will walk over the trap and make it appear that everything is fine. Then the party following after him will trigger the trap with their great weight, and something bad will happen to them. What he has not accounted for is the fact that the party has 5 zombies who they are putting at the front of their party for very good reason, as it turns out. Also, Dr. Wiggles is riding on one of their shoulders. So 4 of these zombies walk onto this plate, which is enough to depress it, and portcullises come down on the front and back of them, separating them off, and a counterweight somewhere behind the wall begins to fall, and this elevator trap yanks them away up into the castle and out of sight. Nyx uses her connection to Dr. Wiggles, her familiar, to see through his eyes, and sees that poison gas is filling the entire elevator. And the zombies are just kind of standing there looking around, unaffected by it in any way. So it's super, super good that the entire party wasn't in an elevator poison gas trap, but we are perhaps a little rightfully upset that 4 out of our 5 zombies just kind of got deleted off the map. We are able to recall Dr. Wiggles, but now we're just down to 1 Dance Macabre zombie.
No, see, Alan did this on purpose because before all this, my zombies were kicking ass.
That's true.
How well they were kicking ass, and so he took them away.
Suffering from success.
The only thing I like better than giving Kayla a bunch of really cool shit is bullying her. Anyway, they are going through a whole nother level of the castle. I put this story in here because I didn't know where else to do it. Speaking of random encounters where you find people in webs, the same thing happens again, but it turns out I'm rolling every time to see who is in the web. So this time they discover a Vistani, and he's like, "Oh, thank you for cutting me out of that web. That was awful. I will help you guys in whatever way I can." And we're suspicious of this because, as everybody knows, the Vistani work for Strahd, but also for another more specific reason that everybody but Duncan is clued in on. And the fact is that when Duncan was in here, when Peregrine was in here on her own, I, besides the witches and the whites, also had everybody else prepare a 3rd type of character. Because the 3rd random encounter I wanted them to have in their pocket was a group of Vistani who would pretend to befriend Peregrine while actually trying to collect information from her to relay to Strahd later about her and the party. They would help her just enough to like help her navigate threats and stuff, because honestly I kind of wanted some group to find Peregrine and like help her and make her feel not so isolated here, to perhaps prolong her time in the castle. So maybe I would have been better served bumping these guys to the front a little bit. But we never got to see them. Peregrine left before we ever met them. So seeing now that this is a Vistani who says that he wants to help the party very much, everybody but Duncan, and nobody feels comfortable saying this out loud, has a meta reason to suspect this may not be legit. We go pretty quickly from here. We circle back to the chapel, and we find that things are a little different than the last time that we were here. The abbot is a lot more upset. He is standing by the altar where the icon is like knocked over on its side, and he's looking at his blackened hand, and he is having kind of a breakdown. He sort of stammers out that he picked up the idol and it like burned him, it rejected him, and he for some reason believes that this is an indictment of some kind upon his character. What the abbot has sensed while looking at the icon, but the party doesn't know this, is that this icon of Ravenloft is indeed a like icon of pure good, which when a non-good character touches it, burns them for a fuck ton of damage. It is the reason that the skeleton who was next to it is dead. He was an evil cleric who tried to pick it up and it simply killed him. So the abbot is being confronted by an alignment change that he has not really accepted or been aware of, but this has been presented to him in pretty stark terms, and he is grappling with what this means, like what the ramifications of this are. And the party, not sensing this, goes, "What are you doing picking up icons in a dungeon, you fucking idiot? It just burned you. It's just a trap or something. You're gonna be fine. You're gonna be okay." And they roll really well, and they calm him down. And he's like, "But are you saying that this would happen just to anybody who picked this up? I thought it was because it was saying I wasn't good." And this really helpful Vistani guy, looking at this really expensive looking silver icon, goes, "Well, I'll pick it up, and I'm sure it'll be fine." So he picks it up, and he's immediately killed. And the party goes, "See? It would have happened to anybody. It's not because you were evil. This is just an icon that kills you if you pick it up." In full honesty,
We had no reason to believe any different.
yeah.
Oh, yes, we did. I 100% knew that it was gonna like probably kill Badbeard.
In total honesty, I was totally happy with the party suspecting that this Vistani was secretly evil. My plan was that whether he was actually evil or was actually helpful would be totally dependent on, when the reveal came, which one was funnier at the time. So this is where we landed on that, and I regret nothing.
Alan's stream.
Oh no, you haven't missed much.
Yeah, this was a furtheration of us just trying to like. Don't worry about it. I mean, just keep doing your stuff. Maybe it'll be valuable for us. We don't know.
Yeah. Let's see how this plays out. So Alpha keeps going. They keep exploring after that. One place that Alpha goes to is the bottom of the North Tower, and they get to the bottom of this tower and they look up, and they see that at the top of the tower there is a glowing red and gold, this kind of crimson crystalline heart that beats, and space itself seems to like crack around it when it does, and it floods the entire tower with a sickly light, and they feel this thrum of terrible energy above them, and they go, "Oh, okay," and they leave, and they don't ever come back. Anyway.
Well. So action took Peregrine in his arms
and levitated up. And we went pretty high up, and then we saw that surrounding the heart were a fuck ton of what we knew to be animated swords. And we said, well, that's too much of an issue. We're going to table this and come back later.
And then we ended up... Well,
yeah.
Oh my god. Wow. I didn't know you could win without doing that.
Well, we're really good. We're really bad at it.
Action would have to end up getting through something that Prime did not have to get through, but Prime would have to get through something Alpha did not have to get through. I think we will find that it balances out in the end. It's at this point that we're going to talk about Alpha climbing the high tower, which is kind of catching up with what Prime actually does pretty early on. Prime comes here pretty quickly because that's where their poem has led them. Climbing to the very top of the highest tower at Ravenloft, you find that there is a shaft that then descends down, down, down to the catacombs, the lowest level of Ravenloft, and that to get to that place, you have to plummet from this high place. Alpha has an encounter here because there are a number of creatures waiting here at the precipice. One of them, standing beneath this section of roof that has collapsed with open sky above him, is Ismark. And he seems to have been waiting for them. But he's not alone. Standing with him is this guy Escher, whom Peregrine has met previously and knows to be a wily one. And Ismark, primed as he seems to have been, lights a firework that streams off into the sky and explodes in a clear signal of some sort to someone watching the castle from somewhere, presumably, and seems to be an indication that the party has arrived at this place at this time, and something should now be set in motion. Whereupon we roll initiative. The winner of initiative is Escher, who pushes Ismark into the pit. He falls down, down, down toward the catacombs. I have Daniel with the party at this point, and I decided that Daniel's role is going to be to try to handle things that aren't in combat. And also, I'm going to play him as George, not having played 5th edition in like a couple of years with the group. And he says, don't worry, I'll just slow fall down there after him. And he starts running down the side of the shaft, and the party tries to yell at him. The slow fall doesn't work that way, but he's already gone too fast, and he doesn't hear them. So he has run down to try to save his mark at the bottom of this pit. But other vampire spawn have crawled out around Escher, and we come to battle here. There is a lot of damage being thrown around. Escher takes enough hits that he decides to run away like a little bitch, and he scampers off. There is a lot of trying to push people through arrow slits, which culminates with one vampire spawn and one peregrine, each being pushed through an arrow slit and falling from the high tower. They spiral, grappling with one another, down, 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 down. We manage to get a feather fall on Peregrine, who jukes the vampire spawn. The vampire spawn cracks through the roof of the chapel and splats on the floor, is barely not killed by the impact, but as she tries to get to their feet, she finds the abbot standing over her, who simply disintegrates her with radiant damage. Peregrine survives the impact and is able to laboriously make her way back up the tower to eventually regain the company of her allies. Prime does not have an encounter here, and we just get to skip to what happens with both groups once everything calms down, which is that we meet somebody here. And what a funny little somebody. What a wonderful little man. And I'm so glad that we had a chance to really make something with this little guy. So we had different names for this guy in the two groups. In one group, his name was Jester. In one group, his name was Toy Boy. His true name, as given by the adventure path, is Piddlewick II, because long ago, a clockwork toy maker came to Castle Ravenloft and introduced this wonderful creation as sort of a resume for himself, made in the image of the court jester of the time, Piddlewick, as like, oh yes, this is sort of a mini-me for him. Piddlewick really fucking hated this thing, saw it as like a really insulting attempt to mimic him and perhaps replace him, and was very openly rude and dismissive about him. And then one day just kind of mysteriously fell down some stairs and broke his neck and died. And has ever since been a ghost in the castle who Peregrine already met.
It is very nice.
With him dead, Piddlewick II was sort of elevated to court jester position, but not really, because he's really horrifying. And people couldn't really stomach seeing him for very long. So they put him in a closet in the guest quarters, and he would just kind of sit there for a very long time in unused storage. And every so often over the years, somebody staying in the guest quarters would be found dead in the morning, just kind of suffocated mysteriously. And as the castle has fallen into ruin, he's just kind of been around here. So the thing of Piddlewick II is that if you are nice to him, he loves you very much. All that he wants is to perform and to be applauded, because all of his existence, people have just looked at him as a horrible little thing and not wanted to look at him, and his purpose is to perform and bring joy. So that's what he wants. And if you aren't nice to him, then you'd better not be alone with him at any point. Good job, all those of you who voiced concern about him, for making sure that you were never alone with him at any point. And especially good job to those of you who were so nice to him and adopted him and made sure that you were with him at all times, because he really just wanted to stand next to you and hold your hand and support you.
How close was Lucian to death?
Nyx did a really great job handling Toy Boy. He was super happy to be by her side at all times and was never separated from her by circumstance. So I would say that,
Lucian may have never said anything horrific to his face,
Mm-hmm.
but Lucian was very afraid. And you guys, the first time we saw him, we all did a perception check. Lucian was the only one that passed, so he looks up and sees Toy Boy on the ceiling. And then it's the end of the session, and then we couldn't play for like 3 weeks. And I had to live with being the only one who saw this picture. 3 weeks.
I'm so glad it happened to you. So.
Yeah, no, it is funnier that way. But that's why Lucian had such a beef with Toy Boy, other than the obvious.
I mean, like, yeah, but Nyx thought he was beautiful. Like, not even. she thought he was the most beautiful boy in the world. Well, the second most beautiful boy.
I have like the sense that like most of Alpha encountered this thing, and we were like, okay, like, you know what? Fine, you know, you're not actively attacking us, and Nyx really likes you, so whatever.
It's amazing what concessions we were making.
Yeah, we made a lot of concessions. Alan's stream.
I thought it made absolutely the most sense in the world for Nyx to get in good with Toy Boy pretty much immediately. I was kind of touched that like Shava was like, yeah, this is a creature who deserves like sympathy and respect.
Oh, there it is.
I've done it. Someone's screaming in the background.
Who was screaming?
All right.
I can't unmute myself because there's 2 children here that are on the age of 9.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I see. Yeah, Shava adopted
Yep.
and named, I think, Jester for us.
Team Joshua. But, yeah, I was just like, well, I guess we're friends now.
Yeah. She adopted him in a very Shava way, though, of like okay, yeah, we're friends.
And then actually was like, okay, I'm just gonna like take care of you the whole like carried this creature around on my shoulder for like the rest of the game.
Yeah. And I feel like at first you were terrified of him, and then gradually we're like, okay, no, this seems good.
So cute and like not cute, but like behaviorally cute.
Yeah, very very behaviorally
like
cute. Very endearing.
Okay, maybe you're not so bad.
My favorite thing about Toy Boy was that he consistently made like he wasn't really capable of doing anything, but he's like frequently just like made him something of his action economy to like just assist even the slightest, and I'm like, oh my god, that's.
Playboy saved Nyx's life like a couple times, okay? Like, to be clear.
Well, maybe I don't remember those moments as vividly.
In Alpha, Toy Boy did throw himself in front of a fireball for Nyx.
Yes.
And reduced the damage that she took, while nearly obliterating himself. And then we mended him, and everything came out okay.
And I named him Toy Boy, not Lucian, but me, because I was the first one to see him, and he's a boy and he's a toy, so I wanted Boy Toy, but that's inappropriate. So I started calling him Toy Boy, and then I named him.
It became
That
a
makes
thing.
sense. I follow your logic perfectly.
Mm-hmm. From here, both parties descend...
Alan?
What?
Can I interrupt? I
Yeah.
have one thing before both parties went to the catacombs. We went to Rahadin's office.
Oh, yeah.
We opened the door, and then a shade of Rahadin appeared, which was really horrifying until I activated the Sun Sword and him and crit him immediately and just like blew him like 100, blew him straight up.
Yeah.
What was with him? Was anything going on there? Like, was that a ghost or?
In the adventure, it is simply that there is a shadow demon that resides in that room and is a companion to Rahadin. Because Rahadin was already dead, and I just wanted to twist the knife a little bit, I made it instead sort of a lingering, malevolent shade of Rahadin. And when it missed you with its single attack that does 4d10 psychic damage, I gave it a second attack, which it then hit with and did a bunch of damage. And then you blew it the fuck up. So...
That was a nice moment.
I'm glad you thought so. That was one of those things where I'm like, I'm just gonna cheat here really quick. Just gonna overtly just shwimp in there to get what I want. So we come down to the catacombs, and this is a low-ceilinged, bat guano strewn place. We have bats hanging from the ceiling all around here. Any fight that happens, I have the license to add swarms of bats to it, is basically what this gives me. We come down in here, we recover in Alpha, Ismark and Daniel, and we kind of, I think, are short resting down at the bottom here, but before we can really even begin that, something floats out of the closest crypt to us. It is this banshee, this shade of an elven woman filled with wrath. And she says, "Daniel, I am your grandmother, Petrina Velikov. Long ago, I seduced Strahd, and sometime later bore a child. That child was your father. I saw him smuggled out of Barovia before everything terrible went down, a secret that I kept to my grave. Now you have returned, and by using you, lost scion of my bloodline, I can restore myself to flesh and all of my nightmare's power, and I shall be a dread queen unto Strahd once again." And Daniel goes, "What?" So this was the whole story I was going to have for George, and then George dropped out of the campaign. So instead I resolved it in 60 seconds, and then we fought a banshee, and we whooped her ass, and then we short rested, and everything was fine. In Prime, things went a little differently. In Prime, we come down into the crypts, and Casimir Velikov approaches a tomb where he sees his sister's name written. And he begins a conversation with this spirit who berates him, twisting the knife for how he murdered her all those years ago. Dr. Flint has see invisibility on and can see this banshee and identifies it as such. Casimir is dead set on resurrecting her, a process that will take an hour. The party has provided him with the diamonds he needs to do it. And so he begins to set to the ritual. The party can see that there is magic in Patrina's tomb and coin as well. But they're like, we're going to see how that all plays out. And they decide to do some exploring around in the catacombs while that goes on. And it, in fact, will last long enough that they will leave Casimir to it and go into other areas as well. So, the catacombs. This is a really big area. There's a lot of content written into the book for these catacombs. I made this chart because I'm a huge nerd. There are so many crypts in here. There are like 40 crypts, you guys. And this is the breakdown of kind of what is in them. And as we can see, it's a fairly even spread. You are slightly more likely to get a magic item or some kind of treasure than anything else. And it is then also pretty likely that you'll have some kind of combat encounter. Or maybe you'll have a non-combat encounter, which is like meeting a possible companion or having like a little role-playing moment or gaining information or something like that. But there's a pretty high likelihood that there's just fucking nothing in there. And by nothing, I mean, like, at least one of them just says there is nothing in here of any interest at all. But a lot more of them have, like, you know, a person who is buried in there, and maybe their body's there, or maybe it's not. Maybe it has some treasure, maybe it doesn't. But there's not really any, like, thing of substance in there. So we, with Alpha, explored almost every crypt. We did not bust them all open, but we hit nearly all of them and kind of ran the gamut of all this. Prime busted open a few of them and started going to the north. The thing about the north side of the crypts is that almost all of the duds are up there. So they really quickly established a pattern of, okay, if the name on this crypt is a pun, that means that it's bullshit, and we are not going to open it or waste any time on it, and we're just going to keep going. Some of the absolute best treasures are in the pun bullshit crypts, but by and large, the best ones in general are to the south. So they started going to the north, ended up skipping a lot of crypts, and then left the crypts entirely and did not return. But we will cover quite a few things that they did do while they were here. Alpha, in the meantime, did a much more thorough sweep. So again, I'm not going to talk about everything that was in here, but I will try to call out some highlights, which I have recorded here. I'm just going to call out some fun goofs. One of them is the tomb of Growlmore Nimblenobs, Wizard Ordinaire. One of them is the tomb of an admiral who declared himself the admiral of his nation, even though it was entirely landlocked. He had a barge built inside of his tomb. It is too big to be removed from his tomb. One of the people was Lady von Twitterberg, who had, and I quote, many followers, and she was buried with her 9 handsome consorts. One of the entombed was Eric Vonderbucks, who requested that his corpse be dipped in molten gold after his death. You can actually harvest 500 gold pieces in gold by peeling it off of his corpse, if you were so inclined. In one tomb, there was an ornate sarcophagus, and Alpha heard an imperious voice berating them and telling them to leave, lest they be struck by terrible curses. That is because the only thing in this tomb is a single imp who goes invisible and tries to shout at you until you leave and bluff at you that terrible things will happen to you. So we just like blew him up with some stuff, and then found that there's like really not that much in here. And one of my favorites is that Alpha found that there was a skull that they came in and they posited a question vaguely to the skull, and then found that it was indeed a speak with dead skull, and that the question they had asked it, which was like, would you talk to us or something? He said yes, and now you have 4 remaining questions. There were in fact 2 skulls like this in this dungeon. One of them was of a really smart, educated man, and one was of a total fucking idiot. And one of them, everything that he tells you is true, and I even went like above and beyond and had him tell Alpha things that like really any person should not realistically know, like about Strahd and his dark magics and things. And the other one, everything he tells you very confidently is just absolutely wrong. And you would just kind of have to suss that out from their personalities. It also specifically says that if you remove a skull from the crypt, it no longer functions. So the way I played that is when someone picked up the skull and began to take it out of the tomb, I had him go, no, ah! And it was just cut off. And then they tried to take him back in, and he was still quiet. And I had a great time with that. That was a really favorite moment for me, personally. It was the idiot, so I felt even better. So yeah, we had just a lot of goofs in here, but like there's just like a lot of content, and it's just kind of a weird place in the campaign for there to be a whole lot of stuff just to kind of do. I am not at all bothered that Prime decided to kind of skate through it, because if they had spent as much time on it as Alpha did, it would have really done a number on like their pacing. And also if they did the way Alpha did it, where they like checked for traps on like every tomb, there's really not that many traps as far as they all go. And a lot of the ones that are there are like, if you walk up to the tomb, the trap will go off. It doesn't go off like if you open the door, or the trap is fully inside the tomb. So different interactions like that. I will also
walk through this.
Yeah, go ahead.
With Shava having what it meant, see magic or sense magic or whatever the frickin' detect magic.
Yeah.
The entire time. So anything that didn't ping as like something useful looking just got walked right past.
Yeah. And that's a pretty efficient way to go through. There were some treasures, definitely, that could have been helpful that weren't necessarily magical, and some that were farther off the beaten path, but you definitely skipped a lot of things that, didn't have anything in them. A few of these crypts do add to the story. So in one crypt, and both parties encounter this, there is a former bride of Strahd's whom he has imprisoned here and forgotten about, and she is still desperate for his attentions. She feels forgotten and cast aside by him and wants nothing more than to claw her way back into his life. We have a shadow of what Irina's fate may one day be if he tires of her. And to emphasize that, the crypt next door to hers has been recently cleaned out, and Irina's name has been inscribed upon the door. Also, Shava and Lucian both see an apparition of their own corpse within a crypt. If either of you began to feel at any point like I was picking on you, I will say every time something like this happened, I was rolling with an equal chance for every party member to see who this would be.
I definitely thought I saw my corpse because I was the one that died.
You sure?
I didn't even question it.
Yeah. And I think that this is not a phenomenon unique to you. Every game of this that I have seen, people have connected the visions they've had to like something that happened to them somewhere in here. I think that really the overwhelming consciousness behind this is that it should feel like there is some force that is playing a sick practical joke upon the party at all times. I think that is the main underlying pattern to these events.
I thought it was really funny that you were picking on Lucian.
I'm even unluckier than I thought.
Alan's stream.
All right.
I thought it was weird because with all the stuff that had gone on with the elves and all of the female elves getting all murdered, I was like, I'm currently the only female elf in this entire, like, demi-plane. This is weird and uncomfortable.
Yeah. So, sorry about that.
And then later, Strahd was like, don't flatter yourself, and it's like, that's not what I was thinking, but
This is a relief, actually.
So this crypt was really painful for my soul because I saw how much content there was, and I really desperately wanted to systematically go through all of it, and I knew that it was just going to be impossible. Like, just impractical. The limitations of our actual amount of time playing, it was going to be impossible to do that.
And I really wish that they had I don't know, it's tough. I kind of wish that it was a smaller area. Like just 40 crypts is a lot. It was a lot for me to cycle through. And then I guess it kind of helps that so many of them don't have fucking anything in them, but also even if it didn't have anything in it, it still like had to be described and had to be interacted with to establish that there was nothing that was useful in there. But a lot of these were something, or could have been something. A great number of these could have been the crypt that a card relic was hidden inside of. So it adds a fair amount of variability to that. But yeah, I think that this was not a super well-designed area in terms of how it would actually flow. I absolutely love all the bullshit they put in here. And I kind of wish that it was its own dungeon of just that for a one-shot or something. But
had we, if I'm trying to remember the timeline, because we went down into the crypts just to like get Daniel and Ismark, but then also wanted to explore, and then the way back up was shut behind us.
yes.
So we knew we had to find a way out of the crypt. And then but then what I'm trying to remember is when Rictavio did his sending to Irina, because it was, I'm pretty sure it was before we had our encounter in the crypt.
I think it was, just after the High Tower encounter where the signal was obviously sent off.
Yes, because that's why he did the sending, was because we saw the So the point being is that went from being like kind of on a timeline, like we were considering that we wanted to try to be present for the Abbott's wedding, but then the sending happened and we learned some information and we suddenly felt like we were on a really serious timer, and we were just kind of stuck looking through these crypts, and I was like, I don't care about this stupid like joke person. Like, we need to get the fuck out of here.
The sending that Jack is referring to is that shortly after recovering Ismark, Rictavio contacts Irina and says, "Hey, we've found Ismark. We think a signal went off. Are you okay?" And Irina answers something to the effect of, "Wait, if you're Van Richten, then who? Ah!" And that's all they hear. So yes, we get the sense that
some conclusions.
Things are developing, and we're going to try to pick things up a bit. We have a few places of real consideration to handle here in the crypts. One of them is, come on, give me this tomb at the north side. I'm going to talk more about what Prime does here, because I honestly don't remember particularly what... No, I do remember. It happens later. That's right. I have another slide for that later on. We're going to get to what Alpha does here later. For Prime, they come to this tomb and open it up, and they find the preserved body of Sergei, Strahd's brother, still in his gleaming magical plate. They scoop him out of that and give that plate to Sir Godfrey, who goes from having trash-ass armor class to having way better armor class than anybody else, which makes me go, oh, shit. Because he's also got way more hit points and way more regeneration than anybody else. And I'm like, you know what? I choose to be okay with this. I'm going to center myself and everything is going to be fine. And we now have Godfrey walking around in this extremely magical plate armor. I'm going to stay with Prime just a little bit here and follow the thread of what they do. They come to this at the north side of the catacombs, and they just kind of keep going from there. They find the exit and progress their way down. We have to handle some traps and some nonsense. We almost get to engage in some dungeon stuff. What does happen is that the floor falls out from under Hellbender, and he goes down a chute. Other characters go as well, but they're able to dimension door away. Unfortunately, Hellbender is left behind and lost, presumed destroyed. So he is eaten by a gray ooze, which is the same one that Jack will never forgive me for, because I permanently reduced his armor class with it.
No, Java went down too.
And then you dimension doored out.
Oh yeah, but that was the funny bit. Is I took Jester and left Hellbender.
Yes,
Sorry, bye.
took the horrible mechanical guy, left the salamander to its fate, because we can easily remake the salamander at some point. And how long can we possibly go before we have an opportunity to do that?
So long.
So we find our way to this brazier room, and this is Prime's first time here, but we've come prepared with this poem that's been given to us, and this is something I very much made sure to do. because there's all kinds of places that this fucking thing will take you guys, and so many of them are not in the castle, so I wanted to absolutely cross those off the list at this point in the game. But we're left with a few of these that we have an idea of, like, maybe these will go to different places. So we end up electing to take the one that will lead us to knowledge. We throw that stone to the brazier, we walk through a portal, and it takes us to the library upstairs, where, as it turns out, some people were already just hanging out, and they turned to see us as we all poured in here and arrive here. And one of them is Strahd von Zarevich. And he doesn't have an emotion that is visible to seeing the party here, but he sort of coldly welcomes them and is glad that they accepted his invitation. He has with him this 17-year-old girl named Gertruda, whom he introduces to everybody, and she is very plainly, like, at his mercy, but also seems to enjoy a position of comfort in the castle. We're confined to these rooms by the nature of how awful Ravenloft is, pretty much everywhere but here, but she has many books to read, she has good food to eat, she is enamored of all the sorts of stories and knowledge that Strahd has to tell her. Looking around in this space, we also see a portrait that greatly resembles Irina, but, I don't know, man, I really have my animations out of sync here.
Why is
We'll get to that. Don't worry about it. This is our first time seeing an image of Tatiana, the woman whom Strahd has been so focused on for all these centuries. Strahd is basically telling people, like, welcome to my castle, and please prepare yourselves for dinner. I will go and make sure everything is ready, and I will return shortly. And talks addressing Strahd is just a little too familiar with him. I believe he just sort of calls him Strahd, somewhat flippantly. And as an action, Strahd talks his will and charms him and makes it clear that he will be spoken to in terms that he is going to lay out. He is making a pretension of courteousness in playing the host to the party, but he is still taking a tyrannical approach to it, and talks will be charmed by him for 1 hour. He leaves to make sure that all dinner preparations are ready, and the party is left to their own devices in the library. We short rest here, and then we spend a little bit of time exploring around. We want to check some things out, specifically because we're seeing this fireplace, we're looking at our maps, and we're wondering if there's a secret door behind the fire. Shava is one of the people looking into this, as is Dr. Flint, and the two of them kind of put their nuts together, and they do find a secret door revolving at the back of the fireplace. They can't put out the fire, but they are able to either run through it because they reduce fire damage, or they kind of bamf past it, and they make it into this back room. They find a secret chamber where there is a chest sitting atop a heap of coins. They open it, and a cloud of poison gas puffs out over both of them. Shava fails her constitution save and falls to the ground paralyzed. Sparky says, okay, so what's in the chest? And I say something to the effect of, well, not poison gas anymore. And I lose permanent relationship points with Sparky. Dr. Flint finds another secret door and opens that one and has to slam it shut on a giant spider that tries to bite him. And it's at this point that Strahd walks back in and says, all right, it's dinner time. So Strahd is witness to their efforts to pull paralyzed Shava away from giant spiders behind Strahd's secret doors. Strahd sort of narrows his eyes at them and encourages them very strongly to not do that kind of shit, if they would please, and bids them to come to dinner. He has brought with him the obviously charmed Irina. And there's Shava being paralyzed. and I've rolled for the number of hours that Shava will be paralyzed, so she is paralyzed all the way through the dinner. Thankfully, has cast a sort of telepathic bond spell on herself and a couple of other party members shortly beforehand, and is able to painfully participate somewhat in the conversation as it progresses.
Paralyzed in her chair.
Just talking in everybody's head.
My biggest regret about running Strahd in this fashion is that it is a hallmark of Curse of Strahd campaigns that when it is time to have dinner with Strahd, you do it up with invitations, you invite people over, you have a sumptuous sort of dinner with all your players, and you have an intrigue night of it with music and candles and everything. And that was something that was impossible. I mean, if there weren't a pandemic, we all live too far apart to do something like that. So I do feel like this is sort of a set piece that most Strahd campaigns get through, and I try to do my best with it at Extravaganza to make up for it. Sure. But this was kind of the way to try with Prime to have that experience. Alpha, viewing Strahd very much as an antagonist, I don't think ever came remotely close to having this kind of encounter. And I don't feel like you've missed out on it, because I don't really know how that would have gone or how we would have engineered that situation.
It's the husband in Clockwork Orange just for the entire duration of the dinner.
Absolutely. You and I are on the same page about that, as is anybody else who remembers Clockwork Orange somehow after all these years. At this dinner, we have Irina, obviously charmed, as I said. We have Sir Godfrey, who Strahd looks at and says, "You're wearing my dead brother's armor. If I see you wearing that again, I will destroy you. I'm going to put up with it for this." We have Tox, still obviously charmed. And we have Shava, who is paralyzed, and Gertruda spends the entire feast spoon-feeding her applesauce. And
Shava spends the entire time trying not to choke on it.
Yes. And the party engages in something pretty interesting here, because Strahd has an agenda at this dinner, which is that he is going to try to put on a show at least of convincing them not to interfere with his marriage to Irina. He tries to convince them that this is something that Irina definitely wants, and his little puppet next to him, she kind of nods her head and goes, "Yes, this is what I want." What's that?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you for a minute.
Oh no. Am I back?
Yeah.
Bing bang? Yeah.
Oh, weird. Also, it is 9:30, just FYI.
So it is. I will kind of sum up the thoughts of what I'm talking about here. He is trying to convince them one last time to accept that there is nothing they can do about this, and perhaps, in fact, it is a good thing, and that they would be better off supporting Irina by allowing this to happen, and perhaps seeing if they have a future in this kingdom, allowing Strahd to take her as his bride and letting all this go forward. But the party has their own agenda, which is that they really try to make a case to Strahd that something is going on in his kingdom which perhaps he is not aware of, and perhaps is making him a puppet of greater forces. They tell him about a shattered amber sarcophagus in the Amber Temple. They tell him about the possibility of a toy maker who is more than he appears to be. They tell him about these dark powers, and he's like, yes, I've been to the Amber Temple, I've read many of the tomes, I've learned many dark magics there. Okay, you've discovered the secret, and this is a really weird gambit you're engaging in here to try to make up some story to throw me off my game. But they really commit to it, and they really double down. And Tox, who is charmed by Strahd and has all of Strahd's best interests in mind, is really making a case saying, buddy, you've got to do something for your own good. Like, you are in trouble here. Something is going on, and you've got to listen to me. And they roll persuasion, and they do pretty well. And after just a lot of evidence and a lot of insistence, Strahd goes, well, after my wedding to Irina, perhaps I will revisit the Amber Temple and see if I can make anything out of what you've been saying. After all... And then he kind of stops talking and kind of stares off ahead of him vacantly for a moment or two. And then he says, as I was saying, it's in your best interest to stay out of this wedding.
Oh no.
It really doesn't concern you. That's where we're going to stop for tonight. Thank you all for tuning in.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, just goes to show that we see everything's fine.
No content missed.
Some content, but I was ready for Alan to be like, and then that was the end of the campaign.
That's it.
He says, bye-bye,
Oh, God.
I'm lifting the curse of Barovia.
Curse of me.
Turns out the real Curse of Strahd was me the whole time. It was the friendship I didn't have along the way. Did we just say the exact same thing?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Good
Alright, guys.
Good night, everybody.
I love you all so much. Have a great night.